Last week I built this base cabinet. If you haven't seen that video, I'll add a card on screen and a link below. You can watch that one first if you like, or watch them backwards. Whatever works for you. This week I'm adding the upper cabinets. I'm trying to get the shop a little more organized and a lot more tidy. I've really noticed since adding the French cleat wall and all the tool holders that it's much easier to keep tidy as I'm working. Once everything has its very own home, it's really easy to put something back where it belongs. I get a lot more done now that things are more organized, but there's still much to do. Like the stuff on these open shelves that is getting covered in dust and is not very well organized. Once I get these cabinets finished, I should be able to store most of this stuff in the cabinets, where it'll stay relatively clean. And once this shelf's empty, I can take it apart and move the wood cart into its proper home. Let's get started with the upper cabinets. I had to go out and get a couple more sheets of plywood, and I was reminded just how out of control lumber prices are right now. These sheets were about $5 more per sheet than the ones I bought just about a week ago. I picked a bad time for this project, but I don't suppose waiting around for wood prices to drop would do any good. It could be a while before the prices are back to normal. After loading the new lumber into the shop, I flopped the board down on my workbench. With some styrofoam underneath it, I started cutting the sheet down into more manageable pieces. Another way that I've been able to keep the shop cleaner is to use the shop vac after making cuts, rather than letting the sawdust hit the floor and vacuum it out later. Clean as you go seems to work really well. My skill saw has no real dust collection, so I end up with a lot of sawdust to clean. I hope to get a track saw someday, and most of those seem to have decent dust collection. If you have any recommendations on the best track saw, please let me know in the comments below. And if you're enjoying the content, please feel free to subscribe. After I cut all the sides of the cabinet boxes to rough size with the skill saw, I can now take them to the table saw to make them the exact size needed. I have a tall ceiling in the shop, almost 9 feet, so I made the boxes a little taller than your average cupboard, and it'll still leave room to pile some long-term storage bins on top. Each side is going to get some holes for shelf pins, and like the bottom cupboard, I'll do the pinholes by hand. First I need to make some guidelines in pencil, then I measure off every 2 inches. Now on all those 2-inch markers, I use an awl to mark a spot for the drill bit to get started. Then with my flag attached to the bit, I can drill all the holes. After drilling about 144 holes, I once again make sure to tidy up as I go, and also sand off any splinters. Well, that's the sides of the boxes taken care of. Now I can do the tops and bottoms of the boxes. So back to the table saw for those. The table saw left a bit of a mess on the edges, so I have to give those a quick sanding to clean them up a bit. I'm going to use pocket holes to attach the tops and bottoms to the sides. I'm getting a lot of use out of this pocket hole jig in the past few weeks. I think this is a must-have jig for most shops. Would you agree? I'd love to hear your opinions on pocket holes. Some people use them a lot, and others say they should only be used for certain things. I personally use them a lot, and sometimes for things others may not think they should be used for. Let me know in the comments below what you think. I'm ready to assemble the boxes, and if you use pocket holes, the pocket hole clamp is another must-have in my opinion. It really reduces the time it takes to build the boxes. Okay, the boxes are partly done, even though I don't seem to be able to focus a camera. But they also need some horizontal supports. I've seen some cabinets that will put a backing on the boxes as well as some horizontal supports, but that seems to be mostly so you don't see the wall when you open the cupboard. I'm not concerned about that in the shop, and they should be strong enough without the back panel. For the cross supports, I put another sheet of plywood on the workbench and use the skill saw to cut it down to size, just like before. Except for this one I need to cut the sheet lengthwise, and my saw guide is too short for that, so I use a 2x4. A 2x4 is never going to be perfectly square, so I cut it a little bit oversized so there's room for error. Then, as with the previous parts, I cut the cross pieces to their correct measurements on the table saw. Now I can finish assembling the boxes. The cross pieces have their pocket holes in them, and as well as the pocket holes, I'm going to put a few deck screws in from the top and the bottom. At this point you may be wondering, why are there 2 pocket holes on the top? Well, that's because of the mistake I made when measuring. Not the usual mistake of misreading a tape measure or anything. My mistake was only taking one measurement of the space where the cabinets will be. I took that measurement about where the top of the base cabinet is. In some cases that might be good enough, but in this case it's not. A lot of this barn is out of square. Like this post here leans in a lot from top to bottom. So when I made the upper cabinets, I used the same overall length that I used for the lower cabinets. And because of that, the upper ones didn't fit. So I had to pull all the boxes apart and trimmed about 1/4 inch off the tops and bottoms of the cabinets. After doing that, the pocket holes were too deep and the screws would have punched right through to the outside. So I had to redo the pocket holes and then reassemble all the boxes. And now with that done, and the cross supports all in, I can move on to the cupboard doors. I wanted to match the grain on the doors, and since the space is just under 8 feet, I can use 1 sheet of plywood for the doors. That's why the last cut was lengthwise. I was trimming off the bottom of the sheet and leaving the top for the doors. The skill saw and guide did the job for the doors, and I laid them all out and labeled each of them so the grain will match when they're installed. Here's another jig that I'm glad to have for this task. Installing cabinet doors is still new to me, so this jig definitely makes it easier for me. This is a messy job, so keep the shop vac close and clean as you go. Now just attach those soft close hinges. Holding cupboard doors in place and attaching hinges is a difficult task, so hopefully this method will prove easier. I place the doors face down on the bench, and then place the assembled cabinet box on top of the doors. Then I can get everything all aligned, and then reach in and attach the hinges. That seems to have worked fairly well. I'm sure they'll need some small adjustments once they're up on the wall, but that can be done with the hinge adjustment screws. Now I can take the doors off to make it easier to install the boxes on the wall. Another way to make the installation a little easier is to make a little table to rest the boxes on while you attach it to the wall. It only took a couple minutes to slap together a little bit of scrap wood into a little table, and it was time well spent, because without that, it would have been a lot more work to get these cabinet boxes into place. Once I got the cabinet in place, I added the doors back on, so I could make any final adjustments needed to align the doors with the frame. And now the next 2 boxes are the same as the first. That is looking pretty good. I can remove those labels on the doors now. I won't need them anymore. But I do need some shelves. So fire up the table saw again and cut 2 shelves for each box. Once those are cut to width, I use the crosscut sled to cut them to length. Now, before I put the shelves in place, I added an LED strip to the underside of the cupboards, so I can see what I'm doing on the counter. Let's open up all those doors and put the shelves in place. There's only one thing left to do. I need to print 6 more handles. I'm sticking with the wood PLA handles for now, though I'm not 100% sure that these will stay long term. I'm considering trying to make some out of wood. Actual wood, not 3D printed wood. But that will be a future project. For now, I'll go with these ones. This is finally all done, and I think it looks amazing. I'm really proud of this project. I can always see the flaws in my own work, but I think most people are the same. You always see the flaws in your own work more than anyone else will. With these cabinets done, I was able to get everything off this big shelf, and finally move the wood cart into its permanent home. That cleared a lot of space in the shop and has me one big step closer to getting the shop complete. I've come a long way so far, but there's still lots more to do. Click here to see what this place looked like before I started building the workshop.